the infighting at ESPN continues, with the New York Post reporting that tempers flared recently in an argument. An explosive argument is the way they phrase this. In a recent phone call between Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith. And straight from the Post, which, by the way, was also the outlet for the what Pat McAfee says were the false ratings, or the false numbers, insinuating that it was Norby Williamson that leaked the information and called him a rat. It was a month and a half ago or something. The Post has learned that a private conversation several weeks ago between Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith got heated as things escalated to the point where McAfee called Smith a mother effer. The dispute arose from creative differences involving a yet-to-be-announced project that Stephen A. Smith is executive producing through his own production company. And that will ultimately air on ESPN. And it went on into saying that McAfee was, at that point, banned from coming on First Take with Stephen A. McAfee said he wasn't aware of any ban whenever the Post reached out to him. Stephen A. Smith insisted there was never one. Of course, ESPN declined comment. But once again, ESPN's own employees are commenting on behalf of themselves in this. I have nothing but love for Stephen A., McAfee is telling the Post. I think I'm still welcome on First Take. I was scheduled through football season to join on Tuesdays. Hopefully next year that will happen again. And then here's Stephen A.'s response to the Post in an email. Pat McAfee and I have no issue, and the notion that he'd be banned from First Take is BS. We are number one, and he has absolutely contributed to us remaining number one. McAfee was asked to come on each Tuesday through the Super Bowl, and he did just that, kicking ass each time he came on air. If McAfee wants to be on First Take next season, he will be on First Take. I love winners, and McAfee has proven he wins, which helps me win. I don't know how many times I have to tell folks that he's trailblazed a path into a new era for so many of us. I'm grateful to have him as part of my team and the ESPN family. Looking forward to having him on for years to come. I sincerely hope that I will not have to repeat myself on this nonsense again. This is the back and forth that McAfee tried to just put a blanket over the top of, smother it out, about 2 weeks ago or so, saying he just didn't want to mess with it. He was sincere in his apology for getting some of the higher-ups involved and naming those executives and stirring the pot, and he says unintentionally. And here's Stephen A. with the comments to the Post, more or less doing the same thing with the olive branch. But, Chad, what is going on where ESPN has this, we're not going to comment on it, and all they've done, the two of them, but McAfee especially, is comment and bring up this whole saga back and forth again. They never addressed it internally. I said that, I truly believe they never really did anything about it. They just tried to ignore it and hoped it just went away over a 24-hour news cycle, and that we're not commenting on this would echo through McAfee especially, and now Stephen A. And they didn't punish McAfee for it, so nothing's going to happen here. It will continue.
Well, some good reporting from the New York Post, first off, to get the report out there, and then get essentially what comes down to a complete rebuttal of the entire story from both Pat McAfee and Stephen A. Smith, other than not denying the fact a heated phone conversation took place and that Pat McAfee called Stephen A. Smith an MFer in that call. That was not addressed in the two men with their statements back to the New York Post. It was a lot of lovey-dovey. Oh, he's a trailblazer. I love Stephen A. Smith. I didn't know that I was banned. I didn't know some ban was in place. I was on the show again. Hopefully I'll be on the show again. And Stephen A. Smith said, if Pat wants to be on the show, he's going to be on the show. I'm a winner. He's a winner. We're all winners here at ESPN. He can come on whenever he wants. ESPN remains silent on it. I think this is partly ESPN saying, you guys are such big celebrities now with big voices. You're big boys. You handle it however you want. But don't let this grow to be something else. So go ahead and release your statements and talk to the New York Post and say whatever you want to about the story, but don't let this get back to us this time the way Pat McAfee calling out Norby Williamson got back to him last time. What did Pat McAfee say about all that? He didn't apologize. He said it was a warning shot to Norby Williamson. That dude's not my boss. That's what he said. My boss is Bob Iger and Jimmy Pitaro, and that's it.
But, yeah, I don't have a boss.
I don't have a boss. He said, if you're talking about Jimmy and Bob, then I report to those guys. But Norby Williamson's not my boss. He only apologized because Burke Magnus, he took a photo with him at the Big Ten championship game, and it caused problems for Burke and for other people. He said, for that, I apologize. It's a wild situation. These are two bigger-than-life personalities. I noticed the New York Post story even referred to Pat McAfee and compared him to Stone Cold Steve Austin in his approach during the Attitude Era, that his whole demeanor is, I say what I want, I do what I want, I joke how I want, and I call out whoever I want. And that's going to continue.
Yeah, anti-corporate boss.
And that's what ESPN hired. And so far, it seems like ESPN's okay with it for the most part, because they're not reprimanding him. They didn't do anything to him last time. Nothing came of that whole spat publicly on air. So I think ESPN's fine with it. Stephen A. Smith is going to continue to do his thing. Remember, he went on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and he insinuated that race had something to do with Pat McAfee getting away with what he said to ESPN. You know, politically, I have to be different. You know, he basically said there's no black guys going on and saying this stuff about their boss at ESPN was sort of the way he was going. Then he had to explain himself after and saying, I love Pat McAfee. It's nothing about Pat McAfee with this. I was just explaining my own situation and situation for others at ESPN. It all seems like a mess, Hutton, but the more it seems like a mess, the more I think some of it's a bit of an orchestrated mess in that ESPN isn't doing or saying anything to stop it.
Well,
they're allowing it to continue.
In this case, someone calling someone else that in this setting. I mean, we've seen that play out in the media before, behind the scenes. You know what I initially thought? Just because it's the New York Post, Norby Williamson leaked this to them as well. Because he's the head of content with the ESPN programs, ESPN, ESPN News, ESPN2. And he would, I mean, if someone's going to hear about a private conversation and overhear something, right? I would suspect it gets back to him, or he hears it direct from one of the parties involved. So, I mean, this seems very tame, just that word, considering what else has gone on. But, I mean, McAfee has even said publicly he wasn't really bothered by what Stephen A. said.
Yeah. It seems to me like this isn't the worst news for ESPN. And because of Pat McAfee's wrestling background, the more I don't think we're getting full-on worked and that this is a full-on work, but I do believe that ESPN is at least remotely complicit in a work that's going on, in that they're not issuing statements, they're not demanding apologies from either one of them, they're not suspending anybody. So I take all of that info to say that ESPN does not care about this going on. This could be an any publicity is good publicity type situation for ESPN.
Maybe. I just think the investment in McAfee is why they didn't discipline. But by doing that, Stephen A. has free reign here, right?
Yeah.
If anything, this would be a great first take pairing across the table.
Here's how.
I mean, it would be.
I'm not advocating for this because, you know, I typically don't like when people get fired. I don't celebrate it. Pat McAfee really wanted to show how much muscle he has. He should say, fire Norby Williamson if you want me to continue this anytime after I'm signed on, because I can't be around this guy because he's a rat and he continues to talk behind me about my back. Then see how ESPN responds to that.
I doubt he's around him very much, if at all. Other thing.
But he still believes the guy is spreading lies about him.
Right.
And that's going to be a problem.
Now, he follows First Take, correct? Immediately. Does he not?
Yeah. First Take is his lead up.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Post story that he says was leaked and it was inaccurate came out 12 hours before the press release was supposed to drop, with all the quotes and all the accolades and all the praise for McAfee.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That came from the Post story, and it mentioned in there that Stephen A. with a certain rating, and then where McAfee was, right? The drop-off with the lead-in of First Take. The quote here If McAfee wants to be on First Take next season, he will be on First Take. I love winners, and McAfee has proven he wins, which helps me win. And he goes on, earlier he says, I have nothing. Here it is. We are number one, and he has absolutely contributed to us remaining number one. He's working that in, and he should. He's number one. But the previous story with the Post had mentioned where McAfee was just on TV, linear viewership. And, of course, the ESPN, and I mean, I don't blame them. That's why they hired the guy. They're mentioning the social numbers, combining that. They want the direct-to-consumer app and all that, whatever. But am I wrong for reading into that?
No, am I wrong for reading into it thinking it's a backhanded compliment? That when Stephen A. Smith says, we're number one, and he's absolutely
a part of us.
A part of us being number one, and that he's not close to number one.
That's what I'm saying.
And we're the top show. Now, he's also saying he's on my show. So he's a weekly guest. So and he's saying that following up.
And that there was no ban.
He's a big part of it. He's a winner. I want winners on my show. He's contributed to us being number one.
Right.
It's two different conversations we're having here. Right? Norby Williamson, old school TV executive guy. He's only going to look at the television rating numbers and not care about anything digital or anything else. So what he leaked to the New York Post is not incorrect. He's right that Pat McAfee's television numbers are not good compared to Stephen A. Smith as his lead-in. It's a drop-off from the lead-in to his show. What he's failing to acknowledge is the fact that Pat McAfee brings a lot more to the table than just linear television ratings. He's bringing in a huge digital audience and a big attitude to ESPN that they haven't had before. Case in point, the fact that Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee continue to go back and forth like a tennis match at Wimbledon at this point. I don't think any of this is bad for ESPN. Maybe I'm crazy, and we all want to point to the downfall of ESPN at every turn. I think this is kind of an any news is good news type situation, as long as these guys are serious that there is some level of respect for each other between the two of them, and I have no reason to believe that there's not.
That's right. And even
when Stephen A. Smith goes after Clay this week, and Clay talks about it and we talk about it, Clay and Stephen A. Smith still like each other.
Sure.
Yeah, they're fine with that. Yeah, they go about their day, and it's a good story.
But what will occur is this. This will continue to happen. It doesn't have to necessarily be McAfee and Stephen A., but there's no discipline there. There was no suspension. Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened to McAfee for what he said to an executive at ESPN that's been there 40 years.
Yeah.
So, and nothing happened to Norby Williamson that we're aware of either. But point being, if there's no discipline for it, it'll just continue. And also, I'm not advocating for this, but how many HR meetings do we have to sit on an annual basis and take a test about, respecting coworkers? Yeah. I'm just saying, what does that even mean here?
It doesn't. It doesn't mean anything for the top level talent is what we're seeing.
In this case, it's a phone call, and it's being reported, and they didn't deny it, but they're not, whatever.
I just don't think this is one. The ESPN has dug their own hole and dug their own grave in a lot of ways.
But
I feel like we're getting pro wrestling worked a little bit. I don't think this is a story that is bad for anyone at ESPN because the profile being raised of both guys in this whole battle they have going back and forth about who's the highest paid, who's got the better ratings,
Maybe so.
All of that stuff. This feels like Stone Cold versus The Rock back in the early 2000s.
What about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson? Could it be that?
That's a good segue.
Jake Paul, Mike Tyson announced today Netflix, live on Netflix, Saturday, July 20th, AT&T Stadium, Jerry's World in Arlington, which can house 100,000 plus if you count the standing room only. This is the money grab of money grabs. Mike Tyson, if you're wondering, is 57 years old. Jake Paul is known for promoting things through his promotion company that is promoting this. And, he's a 78% favorite, 78% likely to win the fight, according to Las Vegas, because, Chad, he opens as a minus 360 favorite. Jake Paul does over Tyson. $100 at minus 360 would win you $127. You'd get $127 back. Tyson is a plus 300 underdog. $100, you get 400. 25% chance of winning. Would you step in the ring with Tyson? We had this discussion a couple years ago.
He's 58 years old.
58?
He's 58 years old. Would I step in the ring with Mike Tyson? Hell no.
No.
I would never do that.
Here he is.
Even at 58 years old, I'm not doing that. Also, I don't know if it's going to be any good or not. I'm going to watch. I will be watching on Netflix live. Another thought I had is this is not something I would want to attend live. Yeah. Of the live sporting events I've seen, like a big-time fight in Vegas in a smaller venue is something I'd like to attend at some point for a big fight weekend. That would be cool. 100,000 people watching 58-year-old Mike Tyson in this fight, no thanks. I just don't. I don't know what the appeal is to attend this thing live with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Now, will I watch it on Netflix? Absolutely, I'll watch this live event on Netflix. But no, I'm not. I would not want to go to this fight.
Well, I wouldn't. I'm with you. But from the perspective of just FOMO with all the celebrities that'll be there,
will they though?
That's the appeal.
Will a lot of celebrities be in Arlington
to go watch Mike Tyson? Sure.
I hope he's got a really good promotion company.
When's the
Jake Paul? Because again, I think a lot of people are going to watch this. It's going to be a huge success for Netflix. I do not know why you'd want to go to Jerry's World to watch this fight live.
Think the last time we saw the celebrities out for a boxing match, it was McGregor and Floyd Mayweather,
and it was in Vegas, right?
It was in Vegas.
Yeah, that's the difference.
But
LA is a quick flight on your PJ, your private jet for celebrities to go to Vegas, and they love weekends in Vegas. Weekends in Arlington is not the same.
Well, it would be a night. You'd fly in, fly out. But the Cowboys fans are going to show up there just for the hell of it.
I guess. Good for you if you want to go to this. I'd rather sit at home and watch on Netflix Live. Not the event I'd like to attend.
But we will be watching. How about Netflix getting in on this? They've got WWE. They're paying $5 billion for that. And reports are, by the way, the contract ends for WWE and is it USA they're on? USA. That ends in September. And they're not going to start on Netflix till January, is the report.
Yeah.
To make sure they're ready to go. They'll have plenty of people on that platform for this.
I was recently listening to a podcast with Ted Sarandos of Netflix, being interviewed on it.
Yeah.
And he was talking about getting into live events. It started with Chris Rock, was one of the first big ones. A year after the Oscar slap from Will Smith, his first public statement about it was live on Netflix. So they got into the live event that way. Next year, they're going to have Monday Night Raw with WWE, which is a huge deal. But
they want live content.
It's fascinating now. This is going to be one of their plays with this event, which does make sense for what Netflix is doing.
And that's why the celebrities will be there, because Netflix will have them there.
Netflix could certainly fly a bunch of them out, and that's the reason they'd be there, to promote
Sandler,
something on Netflix.
All these contracts.
He was doing an interview with David Spade and Dana Carvey, who did the post and pre-show for Chris Rock when I was listening to this. But Netflix is a fascinating business, just in general, because the original idea from Reed Hastings and Ted Sarandos was, we will have a digital archive. He said this was 10 years before they really started. It was just the DVD company for a while, but they always had this vision, Reed Hastings did, of this is where all media will live. We will have the rights to all these movies and TV shows, and this is where entertainment's going. People are going to want it when they want it. They're not going to want to wait a week. They're going to want to binge watch. They're going to do this and this and this. But Sarandos said, in the beginning, no one thought we'd have our own stuff, our own content. That changed when Ted Sarandos inked a $100 million contract with David Fincher and Kevin Spacey for a little show called House of Cards. And that was their huge gambit. That was the big risk. And that became such a huge success. They said, we're on to something now. Then they started producing their own content. Now it's international. They get the rights to shows from all over the world, which helps their profile globally. And for that reason, they're winning the streaming wars. Sarandos said, no one has won the streaming wars right now. We're doing well. But keep in mind, 2 years ago, people buried us when Disney Plus came about and some of these other companies that had a lot of franchises already. And now 2 years later, they're saying we won the streaming wars, even though the war continues. It's just a battle right now.
He will be more than 3 decades older than Jake Paul when he steps into the ring. He's 57 now. He'll be 58 on fight night. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm looking for Tyson to just
I hope
knock him
Tyson destroys him in this fight. And either way, I'm going to be watching.
Yes. I haven't seen the payouts for this. Now, there'll be a gate. If they're going to get a portion of this gate. But I'm reading this story where it says Jake Paul, Mike Tyson square off in the ring for a big Netflix payday. I haven't seen any estimate so far. Can't wait to see what it took. And Netflix now jumping in because this was on DAZN. I believe he was always streaming or doing the pay-per-view through DAZN. Jake Paul. Now Netflix in on this. Chad, what I would not pay for right now is the NBA League Pass. I used to. I don't anymore. And you have long said you would not. And you are correct. Exhibit A, please.
The Golden State Warriors in a 2-game stretch. Here is Exhibit A for you.
Okay.
Let us show you their results over 2 back-to-back games. And Sunday in Boston, the Golden State Warriors, multiple, 3 or 4 time, 3-time champion at least, right? 3, 4-time world champion, whatever. This group, led by Steph Curry, loses by 52 points in Boston to the Celtics. They turn around on Wednesday night, their next game out, and they win by 35 points against a good Bucks team. I watched an interview with Steph Curry post-game, and he said, people forget. People forget what the league's like. They forget. Some nights you just don't have it in the NBA, and other nights you might have it. And they forget. They buried us. But it's all about us gelling and getting better as a team and getting ready for the playoffs. This, in a nutshell, is what's wrong with the NBA. And I'm a Steph Curry fan. It's not what Steph Curry said. What Steph Curry said is accurate. The problem is, to lose by 52 points, you have to quit the basketball game, okay? Whether you're admitting to yourself that you quit the basketball game or not, your players and your team have quit that basketball game to lose by a margin of 140 to 88. That's not just, man, we worked our ass off and tried really hard all night and just couldn't get it going. That is, we got about 2 minutes into the third quarter, and we're getting blown out, and we decided to take the rest of the night off and not worry about the final score. That's a problem. That's a competitive problem, and it's a problem with serving your audience, the fan base of the NBA. That is a big issue for the NBA. And then to come back and say, yeah, we put it together, guys. Let's look at it again. Just look at these numbers together. It's like a beautiful mind putting numbers together. Look at these. One more time. 140 to 88, 125 to 90. Flipped it from the Warriors one night to the next. This is the biggest game-to-game turnaround in margins of loss and victory since the 1966 Los Angeles Lakers. And I saw this, and I heard Steph Curry and what he said, and I thought to myself, yep, that's one of the reasons that I don't watch the NBA. Once again, confirmed. Confirmed.
And that's why so many people were watching Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
That's the game. That women's college basketball matchup beat head-to-head.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark would not allow any of her teams to lose by 52 points, regardless of who they're
She would
playing.
make that up in about 8 minutes.
Especially, they're all professionals.
You ready for some of these scores?
Right? Like, I've heard this before. We're all pros out here. Everybody's professional. You can't take it. Okay, if you're all pros, one pro team should not beat another pro team at the highest level by 52 points. There's something amiss here. Well, one team has quit if it's a 52-point drubbing. That's a problem for the league. And the fact that the standard bearers of the league, Steve Kerr, now the highest paid coach in the history of NBA basketball, and Steph Curry, all the championships they've won, when it's that team quitting to that level, that is not good for the NBA.
Chad, how about this? I'm looking at the point differential in wins this season and losses. 62 points that happened in January. Oklahoma City over Portland, 139-77.
Portland quit that night.
You have Philadelphia over Charlotte, 135-82, 53 points.
Let me tell you something else about Charlotte that night. They're not good. They also quit because they're paid to play basketball.
Boston is whipping ass. 1-800-ASS-WHIP. The next 3 games, Boston beat Golden State
by 52.
They beat Indiana by 51. And this is all this season. they beat Brooklyn by 50. Those are the next 3 in the top 5.
I'd like
Boston.
to see what was Boston's biggest loss of the year, to see if they're also
They're
guilty
not
of this
even
at some
in the
point.
top 25 here as I scroll
good.
through.
That's good. Hey, it looks like I'm a Celtics fan because they may be the only team that competes night in, night out, and make sure that even when they lose, they don't embarrass themselves.
They will break you.
They will. Well, but at least
they
when
beat Memphis by 40. This is in the top group, and again they.
But at least when the Celtics lose, I have to go back and look through all of them. They don't just completely embarrass themselves.
They won't let me scroll any further.
They keep fighting.
Definitely not going to pay for the blowout list that this website wants me to pay for. Chad, is the NJSIAA? It's the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association. Are they going to have to pay? Because there's now a potential lawsuit on the way because the game that we referenced yesterday, state semifinals, where it is clear that they win the game, or at least they thought so, was overturned, tip in with 0.4 seconds left. The ref comes in, one of the officials, and waves it off. It sends the should-be losing team to the New Jersey State Championship matchup. They're not going to overturn this. We said we would absolutely advocate for it to be overturned. Well, certain rules are in play here, whatever. But the school, the Board of Education, has retained a law firm to take legal action against the Athletic Association. I don't know how far this gets. But legal action over a high school basketball game is a bit much.
Well, I understand them
when
wanting
the human
to
error is part of the
with
game.
legal action. Hey, quickly, by the way, the Boston Celtics, I don't like the NBA, but they're my favorite NBA team. Their 2 biggest losses of the year, 17 and 19 points. They have not been defeated by more than 20 points all year. 17 at Orlando, 19 at home to the Clippers. They're 48 and 13. I don't know that they have any case.
Right.
I would like for this New Jersey State Athletic Association to come back and do the right thing and say, hey, we completely screwed this up. There is video evidence of it. So we're going to do something unprecedented and reverse the ruling and say this team won, which they did. Send them on. Sorry, Camden, your season's over, and then move about your business. But if it's in the guidelines and the rules, everyone who plays state athletics in New Jersey and they're playing this classification, they sign a charter with it. They sign up for these rules. If you can't reverse something based on video evidence after the fact, and that's in their rule book and in their bylaws, I don't think any lawyer, they can threaten all they want. Well, they don't have a case.
Think about the precedent where video evidence, you're just going to overturn everything, every single one now, or there's going to be legal action.
And that's what I brought up yesterday now you got everyone with a cell phone camera, and you're going to get, it does get tricky the further you go down the rabbit hole here with trying to overturn results. This one's just, it's a clock issue. The biggest problem I have with it, it's a clock issue that the officials got right in the moment and then huddled up and decided they got it wrong. What I would have preferred, and I know they can't, I'm sure there's rules against them doing this, I really wish they could have got a peek at someone's camera during the review process. Or I really wish someone would have walked up and said, hey, here it is, it's good. Some official from there or something, and showed them one time where they could have said, yeah, we got it right on the court. All right, basket good.
What sucks,
game over.
What sucks is one of the officials apparently ruled it good.
Yeah.
And then there was they got together and they chatted about it. I don't know how you cannot be adamant if you ruled it. If you saw it, you said, yep, game over, until it wasn't. Until, game for the team that won, not the team that lost. On a great finish with 0.5. I mean, 0.5, 0.4, I think you can see the tip in. This wasn't 0.1.
Yeah.
And it all goes to craziness.
I don't think they have a legal case, though.